Writing the record begins when Daniel starts coming up with the songs. It's not like a band getting together and building songs from scratch. Like, these are songs that are written in terms of melody and structure. I think you could say they're written before Sam and I hear them, because you've got a chord progression, you've got an architecture to the composition that Daniel's written and just presents it. So a huge amount of work that's been done before we even start engaging the material.
We basically toured quite extensively on the last record. We did touring shows, and writing for me is something very separate, and writing as a collective is something that doesn't really happen on the road, because it's just a different energy, and it's too difficult when you're trying to put that through there. I probably was writing tunes or things in between legs of tours during the last campaign, but without really thinking of them as songs, as more of just doing what I've always done. But then when we wrapped up the touring, I started getting more and more into the music, and the songs started kind of growing a bit more. We started discussing when there might be an available window to get together. Paul and I got together at first in August 2012, just for 5 days, and because Sam lives in Athens, Georgia, and we got together in New York. But we didn't really have a plan. We didn't have we need to make a new Interpol record, because obviously it was a new chapter for us, being without Carlos for the first time. So we were just going to get together and just take it from there.
First time I heard material was that August. And then Sam, he and I got together for a few days in New York, and Daniel played us some stuff.
Paul was getting ready to release his second solo record, so it was kind of seizing this week, because then Paul would be going on tour and we wouldn't get together until the following year. We hadn't played together since the end of the last tour, which was a year prior. The band Battles, we borrowed their rehearsal space, and it was instant.
We kind of just started jamming and came up, actually almost wrote Anywhere, one of the songs, in that first couple days.
The song started getting an arrangement really quickly in a way that we've never experienced before. It was really pleasant, and it didn't have to be, we didn't feel like we have to kind of make it process more complicated than it had to be. We just kind of the songs were feeling good.
Once we started going at it proper, I think we were pretty quick on this album. I think it was just pretty efficient as a three-piece.
I remember I recorded during that week, a few of the songs, and I was like, I don't know what's going on. I don't want to get too excited, but I recorded these songs just really kind of haphazardly, just to get them down, and it sounds like a band. Just the three of us. It sounds like we'd been playing these songs live.
The fact that I could feel that energy, that wow, we could go play a show right now, and these songs, they're ready. They have that identity that could go for recording or live. I think that provided me for a pretty good sense of excitement of for what we're about to do.
The first rehearsal we had, in fact, I don't think I brought a guitar. Daniel and I met alone on one day, or we had 2 days, I think, together before Sam arrived, something like that. And the first day I was there, he was playing me something, and I realized that I couldn't come up with any guitar parts, because I think kind of a key aspect of Interpol's sound is that some of Daniel's chords are they can be interpreted a couple different ways. And what made Carlos really special was that he would always find a very left field way of interpreting the chordal pattern that Daniel had written. So there was something about what he was playing where it was well, I could write a guitar part, but it doesn't feel like, it feels like there's something missing here. We need to nail down how we're going to interpret your chords. And that's what the bass does in one of these songs. So it was just out of necessity of I can't even come up with a guitar part or a vocal idea until we figure that out. So I'll just bring in a bass tomorrow, and then we'll just start with that.
The songs felt good, the rehearsals felt good. I felt like we felt pretty tight. At the rehearsals, we tried to figure out ways for having, Paul wrote all the bass lines, and he did a fantastic job. He's really, really, really good. And it's just the songs just had this great energy to them from start to finish. And we found ways to actually to keep it to the three of us in the room. I mean, that wasn't by something we said we had to do as much as we just put it, Paul recorded the bass line, we had it in a playback.
And that just worked well. And I think, you can have you can have a 3-piece band with bass, guitar, and drums, which is a different arrangement than 2 guitars and drums. So it just became kind of intuitive that if we can't even write one song without a bass line, then let's just address these songs with the bass. With my type of songwriting, the bass has a certain role. In the context of Interpol, the bass has a very different role. And so that there was a challenge, or like it's not gonna, I didn't look at it as like these bass lines are gonna be the same kind of bass lines that I write in my solo material. But I felt like, but why not? Let's give it a shot. Plus also, like, there was the sense in the beginning, like, if this doesn't work out, then we'll just figure it out and we'll get somebody else to do the bass lines.
Paul, like, surprised the hell out of both Daniel and I. And my interpretation was, like, his attitude was, let me fill in the blanks, and then perhaps we'll get someone to actually, like, take this template and make it a bass part. And then the more we went on, it was just like, God, this guy's a great bass player. And it just became really, really exciting and brand new.
So that's how we did most of the song. Towards the very end of the process, fast forwarding, we did come back and kind of say, well, now we've done like 10 songs where it was bass and guitar first. Now let's try it where we do just write 2 guitar players, and then we'll worry about the bass. And so it was really interesting because those songs also turned out great. But I think we couldn't have gotten to that point had we not written the rest, with bass and guitar first.
Before we went into the studio, it was pretty clear like the songs had a strong identity. And this has always been like, to me, like a great way of the band when you can really feel like we could go record a record, or we could go play a show. And I felt like we could go down to like a very small club with very little maintenance and play a pretty good show at that point of this new material. Like, it was us. It wasn't like we were like, we'll figure out the bridge in the recording studio. I think songs had the identity, and that's the kind of band we are, and that's why we produce our own records, because we really know what we want to construct in that recording studio. We knew we wanted to work with Alan Moulder again, and he did a really great job last time, and he's like the bee's knees as an individual and as a mixer, and I think he really understands our music, and I think he understands, like, he's a great communicator, and these are things that can scare one sometimes when you're in the studio and you're like, give the mixer a little space, and then you come back and you're like, what have you done? I don't recognize this. He puts everything in a balance, so you're like, I recognize the song as if we were playing it, but you just enhanced everything, and not too much so. So I think that provided us a lot of comfort. So I think atmosphere-wise, and he's great for atmospheres, we didn't really want to go beyond that. We weren't trying to, we wanted the songs to sound like the way we record them, but just with enhanced in the mixing form. So really a very raw record at that. I was trying to figure out, like, okay, so who's the best person to record the record? So I was like, I was talking to a lot of people who, worked on great records, like engineers, like, really, really all very, very able to do, I think, a fine job with us. But then I was like, what? Maybe I should ask Alan, whose work does he like to mix the most? And then you mentioned this guy, James Brown, an Englishman too, who happened to live in Brooklyn, not far from me. And so, like, I just, right away I was like, James Brown, I've always heard great things about that guy. And we arranged to have a coffee, and right away I was like, oh yeah, this is definitely the guy for this.
The gentleman that recorded the record, James Brown, just being with him, just having him at the helm, only enhanced this kind of newfound mode of operation within the band. He was definitely like just the perfect addition. His humor kind of fit in. He really involved himself and made himself a part of what we were doing. And he was just a really good engineer.
When we're working, I think, individually and collectively together with James, I think it's like just really honest, like sort of like trying to capture very honest sources of in the recording studio, like like guitar, like the right kind of reverb, a very warm, things like that almost like something that you'd want to do for when you're about to rehearse a song or for the live form. So it's not overly dressed up, but it feels very Interpol like that in that sense to me. Like it's not in the recording studio. We weren't trying to make the song something that they weren't already.
Just listening back to every take that I did, even at that early stage of the process, left me with this like really strong, quiet confidence. Like, if this is the bedrock of this record, I'm going on vacation. This is fun. I'm not going to toot my horn. I'm not going to, get too celebratory before the thing's finished. But I know how to make records. I've been doing it for a long time, and we're off to a really good fucking start.
James was a great answer, and Alan likes to, loves to mix his work, and I think we were able to take it from that point to that point and come out with something that we're really pleased with, We had not played show for like 2.5 years, so in general with that you're like, what do I really? I play music, really? Like, you're totally like butterfingers going on, but it didn't feel that way. It felt pretty good right from like the first or second show, and then playing the new stuff. Usually there's even an additional sense of nerves, or like you're just pushing some kid out there like into an uncomfortable land a vulnerability, if you will, to playing something for the first time. But it felt strangely pretty. There's an excitement the very first time because you're like, we're doing it, and then after a while I think it's just a pure enjoyment. And like when we played Brixton, like it was enjoyable to like play like My Desire, and I was like, this feels great.
We did our first run of rehearsals for a week in Brooklyn before we came out on this tour, and yeah, it was cool. Like, I was very anxious to hear like what's it gonna sound like if we go from Slow Hands to Anywhere, which is a song on the new record. How are they gonna sit next to each other? And I think it's great. I think that the new songs fit beautifully in the context of our other material.
Playing the newer material, mixing it in with the first two records. There's no more sequencer on stage. There's no click track. So that's why everything kind of has this natural, breathing to it. This natural speeds up, slows down the way it should.
I genuinely feel like, to my ear, these songs fit in beautifully, with the rest of the music.
And I have to give a lot of credit to our two touring bandmates, Brad on bass and Brandon on keyboards, and they've done a stellar job. I mean, Brandon actually played on the record and played those parts, so that makes it, that includes him in the process. And Brad's just done an outstanding job of learning Paul's bass parts verbatim and really channeling what Paul wrote live.
She said, you don't need time, we take, you won't meet your mate inside. My faith won't lie. And he said, you don't need mine, we take, you wanna leave my lady lover of my 18 summers alone. She said, well, you don't read minds, be patient, you won't leave me shaking. Leave me shaking. I keep falling, maybe half the time, maybe half the time. I keep falling, maybe half the time, maybe half the time. It's all the rage back home. It's all the rage back home.
It's funny because I think some of the songs take a few listens before you get them, so when you play them to an audience that's cold, it's sort of like you have to realize that they don't know what the fuck you're doing, and the song's over and they're like, oh, okay, I guess that one's over now. I don't, know what's happening.
I remember being going to see bands and then they play a new song. I think I'm gonna go get a beer now. It's hard when you don't already have the familiarity of an album or something, or you haven't heard the song before. But it's been fun. And I think our crowds, like, or the audiences, I should say, have been sort of very attentive, and I think All the Rage Back Home has certainly been the one that people really seem to like get into right away, and that's informative to you because you have no idea what's what and what's gonna pique people's interest or curiosity or what have you when you're writing it.
I think there's one in particular, All the Rage Back Home, I think that carries great live. That always just had that killer feel, when we played it live. A song like Anywhere takes a lot of, like, that is striking me now as, like, it's a little bit of a studio song, and the energies of it and the nuances of it are harder to capture live. And I feel like we're getting there, and it's going to be great, A, once people have heard the record and know what's going on when they hear the song, and B, just like a little more time on the road, because it's funny, you wouldn't expect one song over another to be kind of like, oh wow, I see, there's all these sort of dynamics that now in the live arena we really have to just fine tune from playing a bunch of times. So I think Desire and All the Rage Back Home are already kind of groovy live, and I think Anywhere still has a lot of room to grow.
Frustrated.